Welcome to the Sack of Stats podcast. Pam Maldonado, joined by my girl Kelly in Vegas, and we are bringing you 5 against the spread contest picks for Week 4 of the NFL. Kelly, my girl, we did horrible last week. We went 1-4 for the first time this season after going back to back 3-2. Your best bets are 0-3. My best bet took a hit. Now 2-1. What the hell, man?
Yeah, my best bet should have been the Texans. Listen, it was like that same kind of thing as it was the week prior. I had 3 games that I really liked about the same. Pretty much that's what it is this week. I like 2 games. I don't love one more than the other. Sucks. Trying to isolate a best bet this year has been absolutely and utterly horrific for me.
It actually has, and I share your sentiments that both of us really liked the Texans. How was that not our best bet? Like, we talked about it in length about how much it was just Trevor Lawrence going up against a very he has been suspect and long, has been terrible. You know what? That's last week. That's last week. I'm not even going to bring it up. It was a poor performance from us. So sorry to anybody who tailed those 5 picks. But this is why we are doing this, because we're showing vulnerability. Honestly, I love that about our dynamic here is we do falter as well, and we had a 1-4 week, but this is a huge bounce back opportunity. I like our process. Our process automatically in is Kelly's best bet. Automatically in is my best bet, and then together we come up with the other 3. NFL has been a little bit interesting the last couple of weeks. I don't think there's any one specific team that truly dominates outside of maybe Miami's offense right now, but we will see how the season progresses. So that's our reminder of what it is that we're doing. Kelly, your best bets. Gotta admit, it's a scary one. It's a scary one again this week.
Well,
You
based on
like
what
the
you
Bills
just
laying
said,
2.5 at home to the Dolphins. Tell me about it.
Yeah, you just nailed it, Pam. You just said like here's a Dolphins team that just beat the ever living crap out of my Denver Broncos on it was so embarrassing, Pam. I was in Miami with a bunch of Miami fans. I was talking a little trash, but I was like, listen, the Broncos suck. I didn't take the +6.5, and I can't believe people actually did. So, Pam, here's the problem. I need teams to pass the eye test for me. So we also have to have analytics. We also look at passing efficiency. We also look at total defense. I mean, there are so many metrics that go into handicapping the NFL. Miami passes the eye test. The Bills, first week, probably a game plan for Aaron Rodgers. Got Zach Wilson in a low-scoring, really ugly divisional matchup. Look, would I love this game to be in November with about a foot of snow on the ground? Absolutely. But it's not. It's going to be nice. And that benefits the Dolphins as well. Look, Miami, if they can put pressure on Josh Allen, we know what can kind of happen here. But the Dolphins, look, versus Chargers week 1, they got that nice victory, but they didn't put pressure on Justin Herbert. That was in track meet. You do not want to have a track meet versus the Bills. You've got to be able to come up with big stops defensively. And that's what I don't think they can do. The Bills, on the other hand, can slow down Miami's offense. I know that they can. We've seen them be able to keep the rushing game in check. We know that we can force Tua to turn the ball over. He has been almost flawless this season, but if you put enough pressure on him, we know that he will make a mistake, right? I love this Dolphins team. Full disclosure, I have an AFC East plus 275 ticket on them. But this is one of those quintessential sharp square games, Pam, that I cannot pass up laying it with the favorite here. And this is where I get a lot of grief, right? Kelly, you always love the dogs. Yeah, I especially road divisional underdogs. But hey, the Dolphins looked so good last week. You had Tyreek Hill, 9 catches, 157 yards. A-Chain, who I had on my bench, was just an absolute fantasy. I don't even want to talk about that blunder. But Tua looked the best I think he's looked all season. He only threw 3 completions, but that is because they played the Broncos defense, right? I do think that the Bills finally got things clicking last week versus the Commanders, right? 4 interceptions, 9 sacks on defense, and I think that's what we see more of. We need Diggs have a big game here. I do think this looks like a shootout, which is not really what I want it to be. I want it to be more of a 27-21 type final. But Buffalo's going to have to really step up here offensively to get the win. The 2.5 is an absolute utter gift. I think that there's going to be a ton of people that like to tease Miami here up and over that 8. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised to see those teasers go down in flames like the Packers did last night.
So automatically in is Kelly's best bet. Honestly, I mean, yours scares the living bejesus out of me. Honestly, mine is not much better, and it's backing the Raiders
Oh, yours
plus
is
5.5 on the
disgusting.
road to the Chargers. I mean, this one scares me. But I share your sentiment that earlier you mentioned how it's kind of been difficult isolating what your best bet is week after week. I've been very fortunate that two of the three have worked out. Last week was the Falcons that failed to cover against the Lions, and I don't believe that was the wrong pick. It was just I underestimated how crap of a quarterback Desmond Ritter was. This week, I am backing Raiders plus 5.5 to the Chargers. Jimmy G right now, that is the question mark. Limited on Thursday practice, still in concussion protocol. To me, him being listed
Pam,
as questionable rather than out, no announcement has been made. That's kind of
he's
indicates to me that
playing.
he is playing.
He's playing. I got a
Perfect.
text just now. I just checked my phone from my Raiders insider. Oh boy.
All right,
Oh
perfect.
boy.
So all three of the Chargers games have been decided by 4 points or less. And this isn't something that is new for the 2023 season, similar in 2022. Why? Because the Chargers do not know how to create separation when they have a lead because the defense is absolute garbage. 32nd in passing defense in the league, 27th in points allowed per drive, 31st in drives allowed to reach the red zone or to be scored on, lead in plays and the Chargers lead in plays allowing 20 plus yards. This is a get right game for Jimmy Garoppolo, who definitely has the capability as a quarterback to expose the secondary for the Chargers. Brandon Staley, he's also the head coach. Reason enough to want to fade the Chargers as a near touchdown favorite on your own 24-yard line. Brandon Staley says, you know what? This is a good opportunity for us to go for it on 4th and 1 with just a 4-point lead, under 2 minutes left to go in the game. What are you doing? Now, the Chargers did end up beating Minnesota, but it's because they picked off Kirk Cousins in the red zone. They got very fortunate in that spot. Otherwise, that is a game where they lost outright. Now you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who, yeah, maybe he's battling some injury right now. This is the exact type of game that Jimmy Garoppolo can have a solid production against. Don't really have a pass rush to contend. Don't really have to rely on a run game because the other team doesn't have a run game either with running back with Eckler out. So now it's just pass, pass, pass. Who's going to have the last score? Chargers. Poor. I mean, they both have bad coaching here. Let's be honest. But just you cannot. I just could never, in good faith, look at a Chargers team and say, yeah, I want to lay it. I want to lace 5.5 points with the Chargers with this bad of a defense. I will gladly take the Raiders plus 5.5 to the Chargers. What do you think?
Yeah, Pam, actually, just off screen, I do like one of those like office football pools. And the lines for this particular pick five are based on Sunday night. So I actually laid 4.5 with the Chargers with a stale number, thought, okay, where are we going to see Jimmy G or not? Right.
Mhm.
Josh McDaniels is a terrible coach too, but you're absolutely right. That kicking for field goals loser against the Steelers. Okay, we're not reliving last week. We already talked about that. But that being said, was
You're
really
reliving last
painful.
week.
I did actually just change. I took the Pats plus 7, which is another game we can get into later, and a stale line there. You're right. I want nothing to do with Brandon Staley and the Chargers. I want nothing to do with the Vikings, which we'll get into as well. And I really want nothing to do with the Raiders. But I think at 5.5, it's one of those sneaky lines that I love always. Love to look at and think, why is this so fishy? Raiders could not have looked worse. As you mentioned, fraudulent win there for the Chargers. Divisional road underdog. Sign me up.
Well, then those are our two best bets that are automatically plugged into our pick five against the spread. We are going with Kelly's Bills minus 2.5 at home to the Dolphins and my Raiders plus 5.5 on the road to the Chargers. Now we have difficulty week after week coming up with the other three. Let me see if I can entice you. The second favorite that I loved this week, kind of a scary one, is Washington plus 8 to the Eagles. You love backing divisional dogs, so let's talk about this. Washington's run offense against Philadelphia's rushing defense. This is the name of the game for me. Philadelphia hasn't played a rushing team. Now, I was high on Philadelphia coming into this, but Washington is third in the league for yards per rush attempt. That is the highest rate for rushing attempts, gaining 10 plus yards. Jalen Hurts, also a question mark. Kind of looking a little sloppy this season. Only three passing touchdowns, as many 3 interceptions. Washington is averaging 9 sacks and turnovers. That is the most in the league. We did see kind of this is a 2.0 version of what we saw last year, where Washington went into Philadelphia, sloppy game from the Eagles, and yeah, Washington.
I don't know. Let's table that one. Look, Pam, bet against Philadelphia on Monday night, and I was there in a sea full of green in my, creamsicle colored shirt, just cheering for just a nice cover. I had a 6.5. I joked on the Kelly Murray show that they were going to lose by 14 because I had the 6.5. And it got bet back up on Monday, actually. So I didn't have much CLV. Do I love divisional dogs? Absolutely. And, one of the things I told my Eagles girlfriend next to me, she goes, on your shows this week, you better say nice things about my Eagles. I said, I can't. Jalen Hurts threw 2 picks in that game.
Mhm.
Washington has a better defense than the Bucs. Sam Howell,
Yes.
ugh, took a major step back last week, and that scares me. Ron Rivera, kind of on that coaching, not putting him in the same category as McDaniels and Staley, but like Ron Rivera is just one step above that for me, and that does scare me, right? So I will say this: he is a great underdog head coach of 6 or more points. He just
Mhm.
is. As much as I think that he is no longer Riverboat Ron, the big gambler anymore, this is a game the Washington Commanders always have circled. This is still the Super
Right.
Bowl loser. And as you mentioned, nothing they did impressed me. Frankly, Monday night, Tampa Bay's defense basically did what I needed them to do. Tampa Bay's offense did diddly squat. So that's where I'm at on this one. I think the Commanders can definitely make our list. Maybe not our permanent list, but definitely our long list.
Last year at home, it was Washington beat 32-21 to the Eagles. And once again, Jalen Hurts kind of really looked suspect. 6.7 yards, threw an interception, 1 sack, had a 94 QBR. Didn't even do much on the ground. He's known for his legs, and he only rushed for 28 yards in that matchup. And it was with Taylor Heineke. And now I believe that Washington has I'm not going to say a huge upgrade. I love Heineke. It was a lot of fun
I
watching
like
him.
Heineke too.
Um, I love Heineke, but Sam Howell, like he couldn't have had as worse of a game throwing multiple interceptions. So this is you're wanting to kind of fade the Dolphins for looking as good as they did, and I'm wanting to kind of back Sam Howell because no team is as good or as bad as the week before. The difference between playing Buffalo 37-3, yes, he threw 4 interceptions in that game, and you cannot get any worse than that for Sam Howell, potentially. But I mean, the Eagles just have not shown themselves to be the same 2022 version. The strength is not there.
I would absolutely agree with that. And Pam, Ariel, and I do a survivor pick. And, the Eagles do play on Christmas, but they are at home. And I thought, okay, who is most likely to lose this week, right? Are we taking the
Mhm.
Cowboys, which we know Sharp Money came in on the Pats at 7? Bill Belichick, really smart guy. Are we taking the Eagles in a divisional matchup? Or are we just going to lay it and just say, you know what? The Jets cannot keep up with the Chiefs offense. And if the Chiefs just lose to the Jets, so be it. I think Eagles are going to be a very popular survivor pick this week. If you remember,
Mhm.
we spoke about that last week in regards to the Texans, and that is why we like the Texans. Who can lose the game, let alone cover the spread? Who can lose this game outright? The more I'm looking at this, I kind of might think that the Eagles could lose this game outright.
I absolutely think that the Eagles could lose this game outright. If I believe it's going to be a touchdown score, obviously within the 8, but I like them to potentially lose this matchup because it's going to be one that you don't really expect. We saw Sam Howell look like complete the worst quarterback, worse than Zach Wilson
Yes.
last week against the Bills. Nobody's going to want, oh, this is Eagles. They got it in the bag. But it's about matchup dependency. And right now, the strength of Washington ties in to what the weakness for Philadelphia is. And that's Jalen Hurts being the big question mark that he just hasn't shown his ability right now to kind of step out of his funk is what lack of a better term is what he is. And if you're in a Washington defense that is producing multiple sacks plus multiple interceptions in a game, keep your game. Maybe Sam Howell doesn't have a great game. You do have a rushing offense. Utilize it against the rushing defense for Philadelphia, who literally has not faced a top 10 rushing attack, top 15 rushing attack in the NFL through 3 games. So on paper, the rushing defense for the Eagles look a lot stronger than what it actually is. This is the big test for this rush defense for the Eagles.
I would agree. I
We'll
actually think
keep
we
it
should
as an
lock
option.
in the Commanders here. No, I think we lock them in. I really do.
Lock it
I
in.
actually,
Lock it in,
the
she
more I start
says.
looking at them here, I think I'm gonna have to get to the window here with the Commanders because it's guess what? Everybody's gonna tease them down to like 2, 1.5. This is gonna be so easy. They just
Yes.
have to win the game. This defense is a lot better than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. Yes, they got gashed by the Bills last week, but again, they were probably just completely exhausted because their quarterback threw 4 interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. So then, okay, we will lock that in. Washington +8 at the Eagles. What is the second game that you love?
Yeah, this one's disgusting. Pam, you're gonna have to go take a shower, like just disinfect yourself with Lysol because this game is
Oh
just
god.
gross, right? It's the
Oh god.
0-3 teams against one another. And no, I am not getting involved in the Broncos at the Bears. Even though I was gonna go to that game. I want you to know I gave up my tickets for that game because that game is so trash. And I told one of my buddies, he goes, I love the Broncos this week. I said, you are absolute garbage for even considering the Broncos laying points on the road. There is no value here. Neither one of these teams passes the eye test. So sorry to our producer, Robert. I'm not talking about this game. I am talking about Vikings at Panthers, 0-3 against the spread team, or 0-3 teams, and the underdogs that are also 0-3 ATS. Guess what? The underdogs hitting at 71% clip. Pam, look, Andy Dalton
Wow.
last week, I liked him getting 6.5 in the scale line in the contest. Me and my buddy used them. I said, hey, listen, they impressed me. They looked good at half. They looked good till midway of the third quarter. And then the Panthers defense gave up a couple late ones to Geno Smith. Look, the market moved with this. I think it closed 4.5. I think Andy Dalton gets to start again on Sunday. But even if it goes to Bryce Young, either way, I think they're going to have to get the running game going with Miles Sanders, right?
Mhm.
This Vikings defense. Do you follow Justin Jefferson on Instagram, Pam?
I do not.
Okay, so what I like to do is I like to follow beat writers and I like to follow athletes. Why? Because they like to give you a little insight. Justin Jefferson posted on his Instagram how terrible Instagram. On the flip side, I don't think that there's trouble in Carolina. I think that they all knew it was going to take a little bit of time to get things going. New head coach Frank Wright. I said in my preview video, he starts off the season slow, but I think there were some strides made here on offense last week with Andy Dalton. Panthers need to be better on defense, right? Because again, they did not have
Mhm.
the answers in that late fourth quarter. But if Andy Dalton plays a decent game, right, I can see this Panthers team keeping it close. If not, getting the outright win at home. I've got one more note. If I can figure out how to do this on my laptop, as you guys can tell, I am
While
traveling.
you're
Uh,
While you're looking for
go
that,
ahead.
I'll go ahead and compliment some of the things that you said. You said if Andy Dalton can have a good game. Well, there's a potential here that Andy Dalton, yes, I'm going to say it, can actually have a great game. Why? Because the Vikings have only gotten pressure on 20% of dropbacks when they have not blitzed. That's second worst in the league. You want to talk about how bad of the defense is for Minnesota? Let's talk about how bad the offense has been for Minnesota. They have 9 turnovers in 3 games. They have turned the ball over on 24% of their possessions. That's second worst in the league. This is a team that is in shambles. And the Vikings yes, if you are a one-dimensional offense, how can you gain yardage against the Panthers? They are very susceptible against the run. They are 31st in expected points added as a run defense. Problem is for the Vikings, they don't run the ball. Their highest running back has 155 yards in 3 games. They have 199 combined as a unit. It's the worst. It's right up there with Pittsburgh. You're talking about the worst rushing offense. So now you are relying on a quarterback in Kirk Cousins. They have 9 turnovers in 3 games. All you're talking about is just have a sloppy game once again, which is quite possible. And yes, I can definitely see a Panthers underdog upset.
Yeah, I think the Vikings is just one of those teams. They don't have the locker room going for them right now, Pam. Kevin O'Connell is now getting a lot of heat about his job as well. Losing that game, throwing that interception, not only was it a bonehead mistake by Staley, they should have absolutely ran the ball, but they don't have a rushing
Don't
offense.
have
What
their
are you going to do with this team? They are very one dimensional on offense, even though they have Addison, they have Jefferson, and the tight end's name escapes me at the moment, but they have weapons. Those turnovers, costly. And I think that
and the
Panthers
Panthers, I know
defense
that
can capitalize for them.
you can look at who the Panthers have faced, and it was quarterbacks in Desmond Ritter, Geno Smith, and Derek Carr. I actually think that Derek Carr and Geno Smith are respectable quarterbacks. So I would put Kirk Cousins into that realm as well. But I really love, more often than not, fading one-dimensional offenses because that becomes exploitable. You become you
Yep.
become you become predictable. And because of that predictability, that's when mistakes are happening can happen. And as from the by the turnover margin, mistakes are now compiling. Since it is your second favorite, and I agree, would you like to plug this in?
I would.
Okay, this is going a lot smooth. I don't know if this is a good.
Vacation Kelly is just so much more agreeable, wouldn't you say?
Okay, then let me get your opinion. It's a team that you backed last week, but maybe I would
Yeah,
like
we're on the
to
same page. I
fade
already know it. I already know it. I already know it.
the
I
Saints
know
at
it.
home, lane 3 points.
The interesting caveat. I made a joke about multiple coaches getting fired throughout the weekend. I think I called for Brandon Staley, Josh McDaniel, and then Todd Bowles on Monday night to get fired because that was the joke because I bet against or on those teams. Never mind. Anyway, I made the joke about Todd, and everybody says, "Oh, well, he's just this defensive-minded head coach." No, he's not. Not anymore. This defense, as I mentioned, got gave up almost 500 yards to the Eagles, which most people would say, well, that was expected. Well, it wasn't expected for me. I do think that the defense still shows some semblance of their former selves, but
Right.
there was a point in time on Monday night where they just all but quit because their offense could not get going, right? They were just if you look at the stat line, Pam, from start to finish of that Bucks game, I had great seats. I was behind the Bucks bench. I'm sorry, I was behind the Eagles bench, but I was talking with a couple Bucks fans during halftime. Just in the stat line alone, was that the ass kicking should have been far worse, right? Just far worse.
Mhm.
The only caveat I will say is they looked much better against the Bears and Vikings. But again, we
Right.
just spoke about both of those teams and how horrible their defenses are. The Saints, we know exactly what we're getting from them defensively. They're ninth in the NFL in total defense. They've only allowed 288 yards per game, sixth in scoring defense, 16.7 points per game. Saints unders have been money this year. Unfortunately, that defense and what everybody remembers last was them falling apart, right? And they let the Packers come back late in the fourth quarter last week and not like a complete I would call it a collapse, but not like one of the worst ones we've seen, especially for being on the road. If they can complete 4 quarters, I like the Saints team a lot.
So I have two questions for you. This is a two-part question. Number one, if Derek Carr is a no-go, do we trust Jameis Winston? That's number one. Number two, my concern, let me see if you share the same concern, is that all of the Saints games in 3 games have been 3 points or less decided. They won against the Titans, 1 point. Won against the Panthers, 3 points. Lost to the Packers by one. So because they've been so tight knit, is Jameis Winston a factor to you? Are these close games a factor?
I love Jameis Winston. You never know what you're going to get from him, and that could mean a pick six that costs us cover. Okay, Pam, that's the gamble you get with Jameis. He makes the game more
Are
fun.
we wanting to gamble?
Uh,
After a 1-4 week last week, are we wanting to gamble?
that is a very good point, and you're right. Games don't land one, so the fact that 2 Saints games have landed one is just like incredible. So I think we table the Saints, go over a couple other games that maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I like the Saints. I like them in this spot. I do think the Bucks are full of issues. Look, if we stay off this game, the Saints are going to win 27-10. If we take this game,
Probably.
the Saints are going to win 28-27.
Probably. All right, let me see if I can entice you on another game. Right off the back, do you share my sentiments in the Seahawks as a pick to the Giants? The Giants, 1-12 straight up with Jones in prime time. The Giants defense blitzes at the second highest rate in the league. Geno Smith is actually really good against the blitz. He's the sixth best quarterback, actually, throwing 8.5 yards per pass attempt, 2 passing touchdowns. Blitzed, not pressured. He's even better at 9.6 YPA. Geno Smith has an opportunity here to really exploit the Giants' defense, which has been struggling in multiple games. We've seen Daniel Jones himself struggle through multiple games. This is an offense that doesn't show up in the first half, miraculously comes up in the second half. If you're looking at the grand scheme of things, I think the Seahawks would be the better play through 4 quarters, but it's going to be probably a wild ride as somebody who has faded the Giants previously and had to sweat it out.
I don't love this game one way or another. I don't love either of these defenses. I like Brian Dable a lot. I think that the Seattle Seahawks have a ton of weapons and can exploit this Giants defense. When does the bottom fall out of the Giants here? Like at minus 1.5 when it opened, I thought, oh God, I sent a text, Pam. You're very lucky you're not in this group chat, but I sent a text in the chat. I said, who hates themselves enough to back the Giants this week? And just like that, the game was a pick 'em. And I thought, oh boy, this one was priced wrong. They gave them too much home field advantage there at MetLife or something. What's going on here?
Mhm.
I think for me, it's a complete and utter stay away. Personally,
Okay.
could I be
Okay.
talked into taking the Seahawks? Sure. But I think that there's probably other games on the board that you and I would agree with.
So to everyone who caught that, Pam, you're lucky that you're not in these group chats. I'm purposely not on these group chats. One, it's too stressful. I would put it on muted anyway because I don't care. And
Oh, it's
two,
definitely
it
muted.
really just it really just confuses me. Like I have my own process. I do my own thing. I don't place my wagers until like Friday, Saturday, maybe even Sunday morning, right before I go into VSiN. But other than that, I don't care what everybody else is saying. I don't need your opinion. I respect y'all's opinion, but I don't need to hear it. So, I am involved in, like, multiple
Let me
group
tell
chats,
you,
and Kelly's, like, in 3 of them, but
yes, of course.
non-related to sports and football.
Yes, yes, one is about interior design. All jokes aside, Jill, that is all we get in that group chat. But it is interesting, Pam, because I don't like other people to influence me either. This is more of like a trash talk. Like that's why I said, like, who hates themselves? Like, you have to hate yourself enough to bet some of these games. Like, how much pain am I willing to go through? That's what I said about Jameis. Like, all right, like this is the real gamble. Which Jameis are we gonna get? We're gonna get good Jameis.
No
We're gonna get
gamble, no
bad Jameis.
future. Alright, well, then let's
Exactly.
think about another game then. I brought up a couple of games. Is there another one that's maybe more intriguing to you?
Yeah. So if you remember, I bet against the Steelers on Sunday night, and well, Jimmy G threw 3 interceptions. That didn't help me, and also Josh McDaniels elected to kick a field goal instead of going for a touchdown and the 2-point conversion to tie that one. That being said, I want to be against the Steelers again this week. CJ
Okay.
Stroud, holy cow! Can we talk about CJ? You know, I do some other stuff on the weekends now. I work for a company called Better, so I've been actually eliciting Pam and Ariel to help me out with some prop bets. And Ariel said, "You like CJ Stroud this much, huh?" And I said, "Well, let's look about it. Let's look and see who they're playing." I said, "This Jags defense, let's see what can be exploited." He had some really, really great passes. Like, I was very impressed with him. And typically we get a lot of grief about Ohio State quarterbacks, Pam, and how they don't usually correlate to the NFL. I'm going to pump the brakes, right? Like, let's talk about it. But I do think that he is going to be a good quarterback for Houston. I'm not saying he's their franchise guy
Mhm.
yet, but I think so far I've been very impressed with him because how quickly he's developed, right? And
Yeah.
he's got a couple of really good receivers, Tank Dell being one of them, who just had a great 145-yard performance last week, right? And that big 68-yard scoring catch that really helped catapult CJ over his passing yards. My one caveat here is maybe I'm a little too low on the Steelers, right? Kenny Pickett carved up the Raiders. George Pickens, Austin Calvin III, he's got weapons as well. So I just want to make sure I'm not just a little too high on what the Texans showed me in a divisional game here. But I also think, like, okay, let's kind of slow down. I know the Pittsburgh's defense has looked really good. That game against the Browns, right? Last week, again, as I said, 3 interceptions for Jimmy Garoppolo. Are they as good as we've seen so far? Or maybe it's just the caliber of teams they played.
So I'm in full agreement on backing Houston here. Now, the one you said, the one question that you have is, are we overvaluing Houston potentially? I don't think we are. One, because preseason I said that I was going to like CJ Stroud in this. He's going to be a playmaker. Why? Because he has really good ball protection. And we have seen it. Houston has missed 4 offensive linemen starters in the last 2 weeks. Yet Stroud is still delivering. He is 13th for yards per passing play, completing over 60% of his passes in all 3 games, throwing for 0 interceptions. Now, the one thing for Houston that you can mark them against is that they've been terrible in early down offense. They're actually the second worst in the league when it comes to first down plays. But Stroud has been excellent on third downs, 76% completion, leads leads the NFL in third down conversion rate. That is a huge uh, benefit to have against a defense where wear the defense down, hold on to the ball, time of possession, all of these come into play. Pittsburgh is a one-dimensional passing offense, the highest rate of rushing attempts to fail to gain yardage. Now, Jimmy G did throw 3 interceptions against a Pittsburgh defense, but Stroud, as mentioned, he has a better job of that ball protection. Why? Because if you look at his target depth, they've shortened it. I think the coach has done a really great job of knowing this is a rookie quarterback. Let's not put everything onto him. 53 of his 121 attempts has been in that short range. So that's what Dan Campbell has done to Jared Goff, and that's why he's thrown less interceptions. You got to play smart here. And Houston has actually been really smart with a rookie quarterback who's capable. I'm fully on board with you on taking Texans. Would you want that to be plugged in?
I love it. I love our card. I love this card.
Oh God.
Is that good or bad?
I
That's
don't
bad,
know.
huh?
I said, "Oh God," because I don't know. Um,
You know,
I like it
listen,
too, to be
I
honest.
you think long, you think wrong, Pam. I think I love our card. I do.
Is there
I
any
think that
then
it's kind of gross.
before we close it out, is there any game that you like more than any of the 5 that we have, any of the 3 that we have?
On my list, last on my list, Bills, Carolina, Texans is the only thing I played. I said I can't trust the Giants, and the Colts line moved against us. So yeah, I think it's these
Let's
5.
keep it. Perfect. Well, then that's our 5 against the spread contest picks for week 4 of the NFL. Kelly's best bet, Bills minus 2.5 at home to the Dolphins. My best bet, Raiders plus 5.5 at the Chargers. And then the other 3 that we came up with to fill our 5, Washington plus 8 at Eagles, Panthers plus 4 at home to the Vikings, and Texans plus 3 at home to the Steelers. That does it for another episode of Stack and Stacks. Stack of Stats. Jeez, I can't talk today. That does it for another episode of Stack of Stats. Do make sure to follow Kelly in Vegas at Kelly in Vegas on Twitter. You can follow me at Pamela M35. And make sure to check out all of the other content on Wager Talk.